Drawing attention in a scene via light shaping. Now, this technique and what we're going to be talking about here is very similar. I mean, basically, we're doing the same thing that we were before with adding to existing light, right? We talked about something similar to this. But I want to talk about the process and kind of the steps as to why I made the decision to light this shot this way. So let's go ahead and just talk through overall, what the heck was I thinking climbing a tree? All right, so our couple actually had a photo on their mood board that was a top-down shot, and we saw this little spot where there's this tree, and I thought, hey, it'd be really cool to get up in this tree and to shoot down on you guys like that shot you had on your mood board, and kind of get you guys maybe like almost in a position where you're dancing or just hugging in an embrace, just all about you two, but shot from a unique angle. So yes, I made this precarious climb up this tree. And once I was up there, I had my assistant tossing my camera. It was very something I probably would not recommend to you, but we photographers do these kind of things. We pose funny when we're taking photos. We have very strange habits of climbing things, and that's just photographers in general. I'm not going to try and explain it. All right, so for composition and attributes, well, compositionally, we wanted to shoot top-down angle. Attributes-wise, I wanted to shoot this wide open. So I grabbed my 35mm Sigma, this guy, my Sigma Art, and I wanted to shoot on this lens, particularly because it gave me a semi-wide kind of look at the scene, while I could shoot it at f1.4 and get a tack sharp image and just have a beautiful looking photo from it. So I had my Sigma on there, I had my Photix Odin mounted, and I was using Odins off camera, but I hadn't decided yet whether I wanted them in the shot. Now, the point that I decided was basically, when I got up there and I took this first shot, I took it at 1/100 of a second at f1.4 ISO 100, and again, I always like to start warm generally, so I'm about close to 7,000 Kelvin in camera. This is ambient light only. They're kind of posed so that the ambient light is coming directly into them, so we're shooting with the ambient light direction as far as the way that they're posed already. And I expose this for skin tones. Now, I love natural light. I love the way natural light looks. It's fantastic, it's great, it's brilliant, but sometimes in a scene like this, had the entire background been filled with this grass, you know, and green leaves over here and grass like all over the background, I would have just left this shot as is, and it would have looked fantastic and impeccable with just natural light. But the background is these rocks and dirt and dead leaves and so forth, and there's no way that we're going to be able to clean that up. And guess what? Her dress kind of matches that color of the rocks and the dirt and everything like that. So they both end up blending into that a little bit too much. If the background were different, then I might not have chosen to light the image the way I did, but since it was that way, I thought, you know what, we need to give them a little bit of a kick of light, just because I want them to brighten up so that the ground and everything else becomes less of a distraction. You know, if your background and your scene isn't working for you, then it comes down to light shaping to make it work for you. So, what do we do? Well, I know that I'm going to be okay with sync because I'm already with this shot, I'm at ISO 100, I'm at 1/100 of a second. And so, you know, 1/200 of a second, we end up with 1/200 of a second with 1.4 and ISO 50. So I know that I have 2 stops of leeway basically between my ISO and between my shutter speed. And that's most likely enough. I really only need anywhere between 1 and 2 stops to get the effect that I'm looking for. I don't want to go any further than that because then it gets too dark and it looks like a Halloween shot, which I don't want. Okay. So I'm okay on the sync speed. Now, ambient exposure, you know, in this kind of busy scene and brighter background, we're basically bringing attention to the subject with a 2-stop reduction to darken everything down. But, you know, a 1-stop reduction would do similarly as well. It'd at least be better than this guy right here, okay? So this one, actually, we'll talk about that in just a second. So anywhere between 1 to 2 stops is totally up to you. I'd say beyond that might be a little bit too much for a happy wedding shot. And even at 2 stops, it looks a little bit on the dark side, but I'm still cool with that. But that comes back down to that ambient versus light balance, ambient versus flash balance, right? If we want more natural look, we kind of bring the flash down, bring the ambient back up. We want more dramatic, we bring the ambient down, the flash back up. Okay, anywhere between there is totally fine. I'll let you guys decide on your preference. Now, light direction and quality, we have our 3 flashes. We placed 3 Photix Mitros placed inside of, I always place 3, by the way, just even though I don't need 3 in a lot of scenes like this, I just place them just so I have the power there. So I have them on my speed bracket, and they're placed inside of a Apollo orb. And with that orb, we basically used, or I'm sorry, we placed it inside the Apollo strip, and we're using the diffusion and the grid with that strip. We have a, usually I'll just defer to the Apollo orb if I just need a small amount of light, and I'm dealing with like a couple and not a large subject that I need to be lighting. The light direction and the quality, so we already know that the quality is gridded, it's diffused, so it's gonna be a nice soft light source, and I've placed it just out of camera right here. Why? Because I want it to follow the existing light. I want it to just bring them up a little bit from that background. So I matched the existing light as far as the direction of that existing light. And again, because we're leaving ambient light fill, we're leaving all that stuff in there, we're also making sure that we're matching the color temperature just by leaving it daylight, right? Because our regular color temperature is just daylight over here. Okay, so we take our test shot, and this was actually the test shot. And on the first test shot, I found that I had too much power, and there was also light spilling onto the background. So you can see like the grass getting lit up over here. We had the trees over here was being lit up right there. That's the perfect situation for not only, number one, a lower flash power, because I think we're at like, what are we at? I don't think I wrote down the actual flash power there, but we can put the grid and the diffuser on there, which is going to cut down power, and the grid is going to control the light so it doesn't spill onto other areas like the tree and all the grass and everything. I just want the light to be on them. So it's a fantastic control device to really put the light exactly where we need it. So with that test shot, I got a little bit better of a balance over here. We have nice light on them. Again, if I had this to do again, I would have taken one shot at one stop under and one shot at two stops under, which was this one, and then decided in post which one I like better. But I still like this shot. I think it could be a little bit brighter, and we can always just brighten that in post too. The detail is still there. It's just been burned down a little bit. All right, so this looks great. We have 3 Photex Metroses with the Westcott Apollo strip with diffusion plus the grid. We're at around 1/8 to 1/4 power with the 3 of these flashes firing in. Again, it's going to depend on how many flashes you're using. If you're using just one, most likely you're going to be at 1/4 power. If you're using 3, you're going to be at 1/8 to 1/16 and so forth. Again, distance to the subject and everything. But if we compare these shots, again, the whole purpose of this chapter is to visualize what a scene is going to look like when we darken things down, when we add our own light. So when standing up there, I know that the shadow areas of the trees are going to become mostly dark. I know that the green is going to become kind of a deeper green and more lush green by pulling it down. I know that the ground is going to become a different color now than her dress, which is what I want, because that's the whole purpose of doing this, was to make her dress and to make him and her, their faces, stand out from something that was a little bit distracting overall. So again, just learn to interpret these kind of things and to visualize what's going to happen if I do this in camera, if I pull things down, if I add light. And if I add light and it's getting into areas that I don't want, again, we have our grids, we have our control devices that we can use to control and shape the light into the quality, the direction, and to the basically size of the subject or the size of that area that we want to fill. All right, so that's it for this tutorial. Let's head on to the next one now.